If you're watching this, I'm going to guess that love doesn't feel like a fairy tale to you. It probably feels like a war zone. And the most confusing part of this war is that you aren't just fighting with your partner, you're fighting a civil war inside your own body. You know the specific feeling I'm talking about. It's a paradox. It's that desperate, clawing hunger to be close to someone, to be seen, to be held, to merge with another person. You crave intimacy more than anything. But the moment you get it, the moment someone actually steps into your space, offers you consistency and tries to love you, a panic alarm goes off in your brain. Suddenly you feel suffocated, you feel trapped, you feel the ick. You want to run. You want to burn it all down. So you do. You pull away. You sabotage. But as soon as you create that distance, as soon as you are safe and alone, the other side of you wakes up. The anxiety kicks back in. You think, oh my God, what have I done? I've ruined it. They're going to leave me. And you spin around and chase them back again. You're driving a car with one foot slammed on the gas and the other one slammed on the brake. You are burning out your engine and you're going nowhere. In psychology, this is known as Anxious-Avoidant attachment. You might also hear it called Fearful-Avoidant or Disorganized Attachment. It's actually the rarest form of attachment styles, affecting only a small percentage of the population. But it is, without a doubt, the most painful to live with. It is a constant biological confusion. Today, we're going to do a deep dive. This is not a short hacks video. We're going to deconstruct the neuroscience of why you are wired this way. We're going to look at the source of fear paradox from your childhood. And most importantly, I'm going to give you a complete clinical roadmap of how to move from this chaotic state into what we call earned secure attachment. You're not broken. You're not crazy, although it might feel like it sometimes. You're a survivor of a specific type of environment and your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. So we need to learn how to rewrite it. Part 2, the diagnosis. What is anxious-avoidant? To understand how to heal, we have to understand exactly where you sit on the map of human connection. Attachment theory, which started with John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, usually divides people into 3 clear categories: secure, anxious, and avoidant. But later, researchers realized there was a group that didn't quite fit. A group that didn't just cling and didn't just run. They did both. If you are secure, you are comfortable with intimacy and independence. If you're anxious preoccupied, you crave intimacy, but you are terrified of abandonment, so you cling. And if you're dismissive avoidant, you equate intimacy with a loss of freedom, so you push people away to maintain your independence. And then there's you, the 4th quadrant, the fearful avoidant. If you have this style, you possess high anxiety and high avoidance. This creates a very specific worldview. You have a positive view of others, meaning you believe they are capable of love, but a negative view of yourself, meaning you don't believe you are worthy of it. However, simultaneously, you have a negative view of others. You don't trust them. And a protective view of yourself. You believe you must survive alone. It is a state of constant hypervigilance. You're always scanning the room for danger, but the danger comes from 2 directions. If your partner is too quiet, your anxious side screams, "They're leaving, do something." And if your partner is too loving, your avoidant side screams, "They're manipulating you. They're going to smother you, run." This manifests in what we call come here, go away behaviour. When you're single, you likely fantasize about the perfect relationship. You mourn your loneliness. You might even obsess over finding the one. But when you start dating someone who is actually available, someone nice, consistent, predictable and stable, you get the ick. You find flaws. You fixate on the way they chew or the shoes they wear or a joke they made. You use these flaws as justification to push them away. However, if you date someone who is emotionally unavailable, someone who is cold, inconsistent or abusive, your anxiety ignites. So the chase begins. You feel chemistry, which is actually just your trauma being activated. You fight for their love. You try to prove your worth. But if you finally win them over and they start treating you well, the switch flips and you become avoidant again. It's a torture chamber of your own making. You don't trust peace. Peace feels suspicious. Chaos feels like home. When a relationship is calm, your nervous system is essentially waiting for the other shoe to drop. You might even pick a fight just to break the tension, just to get back to a familiar state of high arousal chaos where you know how to operate. Part 3, the origin story, the biological paradox. Why do you have this? How did this happen? We need to look at your childhood. And I want this to be clear, this isn't about blaming your parents. It's about understanding your biology. If you're anxious, you likely had inconsistent parenting. Sometimes they were there, sometimes they weren't. You learned to scream to get attention. If you're avoidant, you likely had neglectful or intrusive parenting. You learned to shut down to stay safe. But if you're anxious-avoidant, you experience something very specific: fear without solution. In attachment research, this is defined by a concept called the source of safety is the source of fear. Biologically, when a child is frightened by perhaps a loud noise or a scary dog or a bad fall, their hardwired evolutionary instinct is to run to their caregiver. The parent is the secure base. The parent is the solution to fear. But for the fearful avoidant child, the parent was the thing that was scaring them. This could be through overt abuse, shouting, hitting, violence. But it could also be much more subtle. It could be a parent who was chaotic, perhaps an alcoholic or severely depressed, or who disassociated. A parent looked at the child with fear in their eyes. You learn that you must be close enough to be fed and protected, but distant enough to avoid being hurt. You internalise 2 core wounds that fight each other to this day. The wound of abandonment, I'm not lovable and people will eventually leave me. And then the wound of engulfment. If I let people too close, they will hurt me, control me, or consume me. This is why, as an adult, you're waiting for the betrayal. You're waiting for the master's slip. You believe that everyone who says I love you is secretly planning to hurt you, because the first people who said I love you actually did. However, I want to add a very important nuance here, because while we talk a lot about childhood, attachment is not set in stone at age 7. It's plastic. We hear a lot nowadays about how childhood trauma this and it all come from childhood trauma. It isn't all just from childhood. You might have had a relatively secure childhood, but developed an anxious-avoidant attachment style later in life due to a traumatic adult relationship. If you spent years with a narcissist or someone who was hot and cold or experienced a sudden devastating betrayal, your body learned the same lesson. Safety is dangerous. Your nervous system is always learning. It is always updating its threat assessment based on your most recent data. So whether this started when you were 5 or when you were 25, the result is the same: a biological wire that has been crossed. And just as it can be crossed by trauma, it can be uncrossed by healing. Part 4, the neuroscience, the window of tolerance. Let's get technical about what is happening in your body right now. Today, when you get a text message that feels off, we need to talk about the window of tolerance. This is a concept from trauma therapy developed by Dr. Dan Siegel and Ogden. A secure person lives mostly inside their window of tolerance. When they get stressed, they stay grounded. They can handle intimacy and conflict without falling apart. You, as a fearful avoidant, spend almost all your time outside the window. You oscillate between 2 extreme states, either hyperarousal or hypoarousal. So state 1, the anxious side, hyperarousal. This is your sympathetic nervous system activation, so fight or flight. When this side is triggered, usually by perhaps a partner pulling away, a delayed text, or a perceived rejection, your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. You feel panic in the chest or stomach. You have obsessive, racing thoughts running through your mind, and perhaps a desperate need to try and fix things immediately. And then comes protest behaviour. So you're calling repeatedly or trying to make them jealous, or picking fights to get a reaction. This part of you is essentially the small child screaming, "Don't leave me in the dark." State 2, the avoidance side, the hypoarousal. This is your dorsal vagal shutdown, so the freeze or collapse. When this side is triggered, usually by a partner getting too close, demanding too much emotional labour, or even just being nice to you, your body dumps opioids to numb you out. So you feel numbness or disassociation, feeling like floaty or checked out. The sudden feeling of the ick, a drop in libido or attraction, a need to physically leave the room, and then hypercritical thoughts about your partner. They aren't smart enough or they're annoying. This part of you is the teenager locking the door, thinking, "Leave me alone because you're going to get hurt." The toggle switch. The tragedy of the fearful avoidant is the speed of the toggle. You can switch from anxious to avoidant in the span of a single hour. So here's a classic scenario. You haven't heard from your partner all day. You're anxious. You send 3 texts. You're starting to panic. You are convincing yourself that they're cheating. And then finally they call you. They say, "I'm sorry, work's just been crazy. I love you, I miss you. Let's grab dinner tonight." Suddenly, click. You don't feel relieved. You feel annoyed. You think, why are they so eager? I need some space. Because the threat of abandonment is gone, the threat of engulfment takes over. You are never at rest. You are never safe. Part 5, the roadmap to healing, the actionable steps part. Now, this is the part you're here for. How do we fix this? And can we fix this? And the answer is yes. This is then called earned secure attachment. So please listen to me closely. Security is not a personality trait. It's a skill. It's a muscle. You were not born with it, so you have to build it. This process is not overnight, and it usually takes anywhere between 2 and 5 years of active work to fully become secure, but you can see massive changes in just a few months if you follow these 4 essential strategies. So step 1 is the nervous system regulation, the somatic pause. You cannot think your way out of this attachment style. You cannot logic your way out of a panic attack because the attachment system lives in the primitive brain, the limbic system, not the rational brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. When you're triggered, your rational brain literally has less blood flow. You have to work with the body first. So the goal here is widening the gap between the trigger and the reaction. So the action I want you to take is you need to adopt the 20-minute rule. When you feel a sudden urge to protest, the anxious side, or the sudden urge to break up and run, the avoidance side, you must commit to doing absolutely nothing regarding the relationship for 20 minutes. During those 20 minutes, you must regulate your vagus nerve. If you're anxious, high energy panic, you need to burn the adrenaline. So do not sit still. Even if it's shaking your hands or doing some push-ups, run up and down the stairs, dance aggressively, or use the mammalian dive reflex. Splash ice cold water onto your face or hold an ice pack on your chest. This sends a signal to your heart to slow down physically. If you're avoidant, so low energy and numb, you need to stimulate the senses to come back to reality. So smell a strong essential oil like peppermint or eucalyptus. Squeeze an ice cube in your hand until your hand starts to hurt a little. Or listen to bilateral stimulation music so the sounds move from the left ear to the right. And why this works, you are teaching your brain that the threat, intimacy or distance is not life or death. By pausing, you allow the prefrontal cortex, the logic part, to come back online. You stop acting on impulse and start acting on intention. Step 2 is the cognitive reframing, so the kind of fact-checking the narrative. Once your body is calm, you have to look at the stories you are telling yourself. The fearful avoidant mind is a master storyteller, but the stories are almost always tragedies or horror movies. So the action here is to keep a specific trigger journal. You need to write down the story versus the data. So in the scenario, perhaps your partner didn't say, "I love you," before hanging up the phone. The story, the anxious side, is they're losing interest. They're seeing someone else. It's the beginning and the end. But then we write down the data. Is this 100% true? What is my evidence? We had a great date yesterday. They sounded tired on the phone. Have they shown any signs of leaving? Or question yourself, is this my abandonment wound talking? And then the other scenario, the partner wants to spend the whole weekend together. So the story for the avoidance side is, they're clingy, I'm going to lose my freedom, I'll never have time for myself again. But again, look at the data, write it down. Are they actually controlling me, or are they just asking for a normal connection? Am I okay to just ask for a few hours alone? Am I confusing intimacy with prison? You have to act as your own lawyer. You have to cross-examine your own fears, and you will realize that 90% of your fears are hallucinations based on past trauma, not present reality. Step 3 then is communicating needs. This is the vulnerability pivot. And this is actually the hardest part. You are used to communicating through perhaps protest behavior, manipulation, silence, or acting out, or people pleasing, fawning, hiding your own needs. You need to learn direct, boring communication. Secure communication is not dramatic. It's flat. So the kind of script for anxiety, instead of saying, "You clearly don't care about me since you never call," because this is an attack, you say, "I'm feeling a bit disconnected today and my anxiety is flaring up a little. It's not your fault, but could we hop on a quick 5-minute call? It would really help reassure me today." And then the script for the avoidance side is, instead of saying, "I'm busy, leave me alone," or just ghosting them for 6 hours, say, "I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and overstimulated right now. It's not about you. I just need to kind of recharge my battery. I'm going to take this evening to myself to read. I'll give you a call a bit later or perhaps tomorrow morning." The key difference, in the secure scripts, you own your feelings. I feel my anxiety, and you provide a solution or timeline. If you need space, give a return time. I'll text you later or tomorrow. This prevents your partner from then becoming anxious, which prevents them from chasing you, which prevents you from becoming more avoidant. It stops the cycle. Step 4 is reparenting the inner child, IFS. Because your attachment style was formed by a lack of safety in childhood or more recent, you cannot wait for a partner to save you. You must become the parent to yourself that you never had. Now, this is based on internal family systems, IFS therapy. You need to view your anxiety and avoidance not as you, but as parts of you. When the anxious side screams, visualize that part of you as a 5-year-old child who is terrified of being left at the supermarket. Would you then scream at that child? Would you say, "Stop being so needy, you're pathetic"? No. Well, I hope not. You would say, "I know you're scared. I see you, but I'm the adult and I'm right here. I'm not going to leave you. We can handle this." When the avoidance side shuts down, visualize that part as a scared 14-year-old who just wants to lock their bedroom door. You would say, "I know you feel trapped. It's okay to take a break. You're safe. No one is going to force you to do anything you don't want to do." Now, this might sound a little bit silly or cuckoo or whatever, but taking these parts reduces their power. You are integrating them. You're telling your brain, "I am the adult now. I am in charge of our safety, not the trauma." So part 6, navigating relationships and who to date. A major question I get is, can I date while healing, or should I stay single until I'm fixed? You can do both, but you must be kind of incredibly strategic. The harsh truth is that you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. So the danger zone is the anxious-avoidant trap. You must avoid dating dismissive avoidance. And this is the most common pairing for you, and it is the most toxic. Why? Because the dismissive avoidant validates your core belief that love is unavailable. When you date them, your anxious side will chase them. They will run. You will feel that intense spark of anxiety, but secretly your avoidant side feels safe because you know deep down that true intimacy will never happen with them. You are safe from engulfment because they will never get close enough to engulf you. It is a safe way to be miserable. So the challenge, dating the secure. Dating a secure person is the fastest way to heal, but it is also the most uncomfortable thing you will ever do. A secure partner will not play games. They will text back. They will be consistent. They will say what they mean. And you will feel bored. You will feel a lack of chemistry. You will think something is missing. I need you to reframe this immediately. For you, spark usually equates to anxiety. Boredom usually equates to safety. You have to learn to tolerate the boredom of safety. You have to retrain your dopamine receptors to enjoy the peace. You have to sit in the discomfort of a quiet Friday night where nobody is fighting, nobody is wondering where the other person is, and realise this is what love is supposed to be. Now, if you're already in a relationship, you must be honest with your partner about your style. You cannot hide this. Show them this video. Say to them, I have a fearful-avoidant attachment style. This means sometimes I will get scared and pull away. It's not because I don't care or love you. It's because I'm biologically overwhelmed. When that happens, I don't need you to chase me, but I do need you to be there when I come back. And sometimes I might get a bit anxious and need some reassurance. But can we work on this together? A secure or willing partner will understand and they'll want to help. An insecure or toxic partner will use this vulnerability against you. That is a very good litmus test for whether you should stay in the relationship. Part 7, the corrective emotional experience. There is a concept in psychology called the corrective emotional experience. This is arguably the cure for attachment trauma. It essentially means experiencing the exact situation that traumatized you in the past, but with a different, positive outcome. For you, the trauma was, I showed a need and I was rejected, hurt or ignored. So the corrective experience is I showed a need and I was met with kindness and consistency. You cannot have this experience if you never show the need. If you stay in avoidant mode, hiding your feelings, you never give the world a chance to surprise you. You never give your brain the evidence it needs to rewrite its code. You have to take the risk of vulnerability. And if you pick a safe partner and you express a need, like asking for a hug or admitting you're scared, and they meet that need, that moment is worth 100 hours of talk therapy. That is your brain physically rewriting its neural pathways in real time. It goes, oh, I asked for love and I got it and I didn't die and I wasn't trapped. You need to collect these moments, hoard them like gold. They are the bricks you will use to build your house of security. Part 8, the myth of perfect healing. I want to manage your expectations before we finish. Becoming secure does not mean you never feel anxiety again. It does not mean you never want to run away again. And if anybody tells you otherwise, it's a myth. Healing is about latency and duration. So latency, it takes longer for you to get triggered. Things that used to set you off instantly now just kind of roll off your back. And duration, when you do get triggered, and you will, you stay triggered but for a shorter amount of time. Instead of a spiral lasting 3 days, it lasts 30 minutes. Instead of breaking up with someone because you felt the ick, you recognize it as a deactivation strategy. You say to yourself, I am deactivating this right now because we got close yesterday. You wait it out. You sleep on it. And usually the feeling passes. You stop being the victim of your emotions and you become the observer of them. You are no longer the passenger in the car with the gas and the brake. You are the driver. You can see the road. You can choose to slow down without crashing. Part 9, the conclusion, the superpower of the healed. I want to end on the note of genuine hope, because this can all feel heavy. People with anxious-avoidant attachment who do the work, who really commit to this process, often become the most incredible partners, parents, and friends. Why? Because you have depth. You've seen the dark. You are highly attuned to others' emotions. A survival skill you learned in childhood that you now get to keep as a superpower. You can read the room better than anyone. You can feel when someone is hurting before they even say a word. When you heal, you don't lose that sensitivity. You keep the empathy, but you lose the reactivity. You become a partner who is deeply loving, highly perceptive, and incredibly loyal because you know exactly how precious safety is. You don't take it for granted like someone who has always had it. You earned it. The journey from fearful to secure is the journey from surviving to living. It is the journey of teaching your body that the war is over. The war is over. You can put that weapon down. You can let people in. So if this deep dive resonated with you, I want you to do one thing this week. Do not try to change your whole life at once. Pick one of the actionable steps, either the 20-minute somatic pause or the fact versus fiction journal, and try it just once. And I would like to hear from you in the comments. Thank you for watching. Thank you for doing the work. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into psychology, dating, relationships, and non-verbal communication that are coming up soon. And if you do want to work with me on a one-to-one basis, if you're here in Dubai, we can meet for a coffee, we can meet face-to-face and have a chat, or we can do Zoom meetings online if you're anywhere else. My links and everything else are in my bio, so please do reach out and let's get in touch. Let's talk. I'll see you all next time.